esteemed guests, dignitaries and participants. We welcome you once again to the second day of Global Initiative on Academic Network course on Sustainable Urbanisation, meticulously organized by the Department of Architecture and Planning, National Institute of Technology, Patna. Let's have a quick short recap of yesterday, where Sir Anthony discussed about the major climate changes, increasing urbanization, sustainable development, changes in polar ice cap, carbon dioxide emitter, and anthropogenic landfill. And today we'll be focusing on distribution of urban areas within geographies, region and city, benefits of costs of urbanization, economical, social and environmental challenges of balancing costs and benefits of urbanization, followed by class activity. Over to you, Dr.
Good morning. Thanks for being here today. First, I wanted to ask you if you got a chance to see the two readings, the 2 or 3 readings that Professor Shailendra sent out yesterday. Were you able to see it? And then were you able to read it? Okay. All three articles? Okay. So today we'll discuss one of them, and I'll come back to, and maybe a second one the one that we discussed definitely shows tragedy of commons. And then after that, maybe we'll get into Kingsley Davis's article on urbanization, and then we'll get into Scott Campbell's article later on. Okay? So today we'll definitely do one of those articles, and then there are a few other things that we'll do. For the plan for today is to first talk a little bit about the tragedy of commons article, then discuss a little bit about what is urban, maybe do a quick walk through a history of urbanization. We'll look at whether urbanization correlates with economic development or not. I'll briefly walk you through a history of urbanization in the US for 2 reasons. These trends are happening in many other countries. Okay? So what is happening in India after independence, particularly after 1992, after the economic liberalization of 1992, is very similar to what's happening in the US. So you'll have a sense of what's going to happen if if India continues to adopt or try to aspire to develop like the US, you'll have a sense of what's going to happen. Okay? And then we look at variations in urbanization. And hopefully we'll have more people show up, and we'll have 2 or 3 in-class activities if more people show up. Okay? Can you guys hear me back there? Now you can, right? Now it's made a difference. Yeah. I could sense that you couldn't hear me before, but he's made a difference. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so let's go to tragedy of the commons. So many of you said that you read the article by Garrett Hardin. It was published in 1968 or 69. So who wants to share what are the major themes of the article? Does anyone want to share? Does anyone want to speak up and share what you found to be the major themes of the article? Yes, ma'am.
Basically, the article focused on the fact that as the population is increasing, the pressure on commons is going to increase and the exploitation is going to take place. And he offers some solutions for that. So noted it down. One was if we can have selective access to the resources, restrict the access to the resources, maybe based on age factor or something else, that will work. Like it has happened in Australia. In order to preserve the great trees, they have restricted the access to those areas to people of a certain age group. Above a certain age group, the people are allowed to go in there because they know that they should not harm the environment. Then another point that they had was polluter pay principle. He focused on that can increase the taxation. If you're polluting the environment and you're degrading the commons that was there. And he also talked about mutual coercion that was there. So I found these 3 factors were basically there.
Great, fantastic. So you really remembered the article very well. Thank you very much. Does anyone want to add to what this lady just said? Does anyone want to add to that? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Would you
title Tragedy of Commons. Commons are the available resources like air, water, river, land. And the tragedy is irregular consumption of those common resources. So that is the tragedy of commons. And I understood that if there is a pasture open for all the herds, so many herders will open their animals and add on to it. And each animal or the herder will get its benefit from this, individual benefit. But in the end, it will lead to overgrazing. So that is the damage of the common. So I think that was being something.
Great, that's a very good summary of the problem. That's very good. Thank you very much for sharing that. Anyone else wants to add to what has been said? There are a few more things that could be said.
Sir, I remember one line that was quoted by the author, that freedom in commons brings ruin to all. So he was trying to say that if the resources are left, infinitely, then it is very much prone to over exploitation. So there is a need to limit it by certain rules and regulations which must be followed in terms of laws or something, so that it can be controlled in a better way to make it more sustainable. Otherwise, as she rightly said, the overgrazing and how he has related with the pastures, that's what I understood.
Yeah, very good.
And a finite world can only sustain a finite population. That was a line on the paper.
Right. Anyone else? So a lot of people from this side. Okay, one more person from this side, then we'll go to the back there. And someone from that side should share. Yeah.
So one of the finest point of this article I found is like many a times we are only offering technical solutions to the problem. But here the author is trying to say that it goes beyond the technical solutions, like the very essence of existence of a human being, and how his or her conscience is aroused in a certain situation. That is also the point for any change to happen.
All right. Good.
So
Excellent
very
point.
fundamental essence of a human being existence. So that is also to be looked upon.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good point. Okay, so 3 people have presented, 4 people have presented very good points, but they're all from this front 3 rows and this side. So now someone from the back rows on that side. Can you guys share something else about this article? I know this person from Calcutta wants to share. Go ahead and share.
Article says that people are using the common resources, and that's why it's getting slowly depleted. That's the main tragedy that is pointed out in this article. And the solution was like privatization of lands and regulation of resources, population control. The modern examples were like unrestricted reproduction that will lead to conservation of the resources. The early cities were both few and tiny. Cities will grow uniformly, but it won't be in the center. It will be spread out.
Good. Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing those points. Anyone else from that side? Yes.
It also talks about concerns that we should check ourselves, either in breeding or in using resources. Otherwise, the nature will also hit back us back.
Yeah. Very good. Excellent points. Okay, so let me summarize some of this. Okay, so Garrett Harding is writing this article in 1968-69. I forget the year. I think it's 68, right? I'm writing this in 68. and there was a lot of concern in 1968 about population explosion. Global population was expanding because world wars had ended, and generally number of wars in the world had come down. Number of wars in the countries had come down, and generally there was peace. There were 1 or 2 wars. There was Vietnam War, there was Korean War. Well, there were, some wars were there, but nothing like the World War, and very few wars in the rest of the world. Many countries had become independent. As countries, by the 1960s, most countries in Asia and Africa had become independent of colonial masters. Most of them were ruled not by kings or monarchs, either by dictators or by democratic rulers. So in many countries, there was opportunities for people to live more or less peacefully, and whatever they produced, they could gain from that, they could prosper. And when there are fewer wars, fewer times of colonial rule, population generally expands. So population was expanding, and there was a lot of concern that the population is expanding so fast the earth will not have resources to support all this population. And many people were talking about restricting population size and size of families and all of that, because they felt that otherwise there will be phenomenal depletion of resources and mankind, the human race will not be able to support itself. Now then after that came the Green Revolution and many other farming revolutions. So in spite of the population, that time the population was about 3 billion. Now the population is 7.5 billion. And still there is so much of food surpluses there. Many countries, about 1/4 of the food is thrown away. So yes, there is a lot of people who are not getting enough to eat, especially in India and some other countries. But it's not a food scarcity problem, it's access to food problem, right? So in spite of the population having increased, there's enough food for everyone to be fed. Per capita, there's enough food in the world for everyone to be spread and to be fed. But that was the context in which he was writing this article. And it's a highly cited, highly referenced article. But for us, the issue is not about population explosion, but he talks about 3 mechanisms, 3 or 4 mechanisms there. First is, before that, this concept is not very new, of how to do with the commons, what to do with the commons, and what happens if people have unrestricted access to the commons. So the commons is any resource that is not owned by a person or a government, right? So it's not privately owned or owned by the government. So it's available for everyone to use. And there are many examples of commons. A large piece of land, a forest could be a common. In Patna, the Ganges River is a commons, right? No one owns it. Anyone can do whatever with it. Take water, put sewage. They do all of that, right? So that's a commons. This issue of what would happen to common land, common resources, was discussed by and written a lot about by a guy named Aristotle, a Greek scholar, in 300 BC. And many people in AD, in 1st, 2nd, 3rd century AD philosophers would consider this, what would happen to the commons. And in 1800s, 1820, 1830, a British philosopher also wrote about this and how the commons would be destroyed. And he's the one who came up with this word commons to describe these resources that no one owns. And Garrett Harding, when he was writing, he was actually taking the phrase directly from this British philosopher of the 1820s and calling these open spaces as the commons. Now, there are 3 solutions that he presents for population control, and there are a couple of other points that he discusses which can be used for non-population control issues as well when commons are involved. The first that he talks about is having some kind of very strong government regulation, right? Like in a dictatorship, the dictatorship can regulate, for example, how many children a family can have, right? And China enforced that for for 3 decades. China had this one-child policy, really enforced that. And he concludes, Garrett Harding says that in most democracies that won't be possible. Even if there are huge population increases, even in a place like India that has a large population increase, if the government were to say just one child and try to enforce it, there'll be a problem, right? So he says that that's not really feasible. The second argument that Garrett Harding presents is appeals to conscience. Like tell people that if you have like more than one child or two children, then it will be very bad for the environment, very bad for the country, and very bad for your family also. The more children you have, and the lesser chance you will have to really pay attention to them, give them the right kind of education, right kind of food, clothing, healthcare and all that. So you can appeal to conscience and get people to reduce the number of children that they have. But he says even that is not going to be very successful because there will be some people who will be persuaded. They will feel guilty about having more children and they will have less children. But a large percentage of the population will not be persuaded. They will not feel guilty about having children. And over 2 or 3 generations, the people who have very few children would be evolved out, right? They will become very small percentage, and the people who are not persuaded by this appeals to conscience will have more children and they'll become the largest segment of the society, right? So he says those 2 arguments will not really work. So the third argument he says is what will really work. And he says that is mutually agreed upon mutual coercion, where people discuss and agree that there are some things that we will not do, and it is agreed upon democratically, and then it is enforced upon everyone. That is, everyone in that society. So everyone in society participates in this discussion and comes to some kind of agreement. And then after that, once that policy or rule is agreed upon, that rule or policy applies to everyone in society. Okay, that's mutually agreed upon mutual coercion. Now he also talks about a couple of other things that were mentioned. One of them is privatizing the commons, saying that this particular forest is now not a commons. It belongs to either one person or a company or to the government. And then privatizing this and restricting, reducing access to that. So it's no longer a commons. Once it's privatized, you can also have some fee or something placed on it. For example, make some walls, and if it's feasible, make some walls around both sides of the Ganga river, and saying if you want to cross and see the river, then you have to pay a fee, right? It's probably not feasible, but that's one option. But it's no longer a commons. But for the commons, he presents 3 strategies. One is that a dictatorship kind of thing. Second, appeals to conscience, and the third is mutually agreed upon mutual coercion. Okay. How does this apply to, say, environmental issues, right? How does it apply to environmental issues? Let's say, how does it apply to the quality of water in the Ganga river? How does it apply to the quality of water in the Ganga river? Now, so the Ganga river is a commons. It flows through so many places. Lots of people can take water from it, and they can dump lots of things into it, right? Sometimes cities dump, sometimes people dump. They all dump into this. Now, let me just pause here, okay? Because I forgot to actually maybe just discuss or clarify a little bit about the tragedy of the commons that we discussed this here. So let me just go back to that, and then we'll come back to the Ganga. So he's saying, imagine that there is a large, Garrett Hardin is saying, imagine that there is a large piece of open land where their grass is growing, and there are, let's say, 4 people, one on the north corner, one on the north side of this, let's say it's a square, one on the north side, one on the south side, one on the east and one side, and one on the west side. So on each side of the square, there is a person who owns some cows, okay? And these cows graze on this piece of land. So grass is growing, some plants are growing, and these cows graze. So initially, all these people have, each of these owners, farmers, herdsmen, have 10 cows. And they all start with 10 cows, and 10 cows eat, and there's lots of land left. And then the person in the north says, you know what, there's so much of resource and my cows are doing very well. If I increase the size of my herd, I'll get more profits. So the person in the north increases the size of the number of cows that he has. He goes and buys 10 more cows. He increases the size of his herd from 10 to 20. And it's more than he needs, but he wants to make more profit. But with 10 he can live and survive, but he says, let me make much more profit, and then I can do something with the additional milk and that I can get from the cows. So he increases the size of his herd to 20. So the herdsman on the east sees that and he says, well, why should I keep myself to 10? So he also increases to 10. Then the person on the south says, okay, I'll also increase by 10. The person on the west also says, I'll also increase by 10. So everyone increases their size of the herd by 10, and now they have 20. All of them have 20. Now, when you have a limited resource, a piece of grass, and cows eat it, the grass has to come back. Okay, because if the grass doesn't come back, the cows will not have anything to eat. If there are too many cows, they'll be eating this grass very fast, and the grass and plants cannot grow back fast enough. Okay, each of them has 20 cows now, and the land is big enough to sustain 20 cows. Then they say, okay, one of them says, let me increase my size to 40, from 20 to 40. Why does he do that? Not because he needs the 40, because he feels that he can make more profit. And so he increases the size of his herd from 20 to 40, and everyone else does that. So now they've gone from 10 cows each, now they have 40 cows each. 40 cows each, 160 cows is the optimum number that this piece of land can support. If it goes more than 160, and the farmers can sense it, they know that at 40 each, the grass is barely growing back enough to feed the cows that this group of 4 people, the 160 cows that this group of 4 people has. Okay, so they all know that they don't need any scientific proof or something, because they are herdsmen, they're experienced in this kind of thing, and they know as soon as they hit 160, they see that the grass is barely coming back. It's not anything more than this can be a problem. The grass will not come back, and it would affect the entire herd. So if they have more than 160, everyone senses that the grass will not come back, and everyone will start suffering. But the person on the north says, you know what, I'm going to increase my herd from 40 to 50. And I know that although this piece of land can only support 160, that's the maximum it can support, now there will be 170. So it is going to have a negative impact on the grass, but the negative impact is going to be felt by all 170 cows. All 170 cows will get lesser grass. But he's got 50 of the 170. So he says, even though all 170 are going to suffer, I'm still going to get personally much better profit. Okay, so even though collectively it's going to be worse, I'm going to get much better profit, so he decides to have 10 more. So the person on the east says, well, this guy on the north is getting more than me, although the pasture is suffering, why should he get more than me? I'm also going to increase by 10. So he gets 10 more and he's got 50 now. So now these two guys are getting a bit more, but the commons are suffering. Okay, so the person on the south says, why should I suffer? And so he also gets 10 more. And then the person on the west says, why should I suffer? He also gets 10 more. So now there are 200 cows, and all of them are uniformly suffering. And right now they are not getting as much profit as when they had 40 each. They're not getting as much milk as they have 40 each. But now they've started ignoring the common. They are trying to not maximize their profit, they are trying to get more profit than the other 3, each of them. So the person on the north says, okay, I'm going to increase mine from 50 to 60. Okay, and now the total becomes 210. Then the guy next to him also goes to 60, and so on. So it becomes 240. So over a very short period of time, 1 or 2 years, this piece of land has too many cows. And each of these cows with each particular round of increase is getting less and less grass. And they're getting less and less, so the people who own the cows are getting less and less milk. Okay? And so over a period of time, there are so many cows that the grass cannot come back at all. And so the grass stops coming back. This happens even in very fertile places, like on the side of the Ganges is very, very fertile. But if you overgraze, the grass will not be able to come back. And then the herd, let's say each of them has got 100 each. And each of the herdsmen has got 100 cows each. There will come a time, each of them will have 100 each. And this piece of land will not be able to regenerate. And very soon, all these 100 cows will die. And it's a tragedy because it's not like some disease happened. It's not like some meteor came and struck them. It's not some war broke out. It's a tragedy because they lose all this land, and and they could have done something. It was very simple. They could have intervened. There could have been some intervention, either self-regulation or some intervention, and they could have prevented this thing from happening, but they didn't. What were they doing? Each one was making a rational decision to maximize their own profit. Okay? Now, this argument is really powerful, I tell you why. In most parts of the world, and increasingly in India also, the principle that really is driving the economy is capitalism. Even in India, okay, since 1992, it's capitalism. Yes, India has some socialistic things, but still, the dominant force has become capitalism, right? And one of the tenets of tenets of capitalism is that individuals making rational choices to improve their productivity and profits will cause society to become a better place. Okay? That is, if one person makes good decisions to improve their own productivity and profits, and every person in society does the same thing, society will become a better place. Okay? And tragedy of, that's from Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, 1776. Okay? So it's a 250-year-old book, but that's the founding text of capitalism. And this is the founding principle of capitalism, that individuals making rational profit maximizing decisions will improve society as a whole. And generally that works. But the tragedy of commons example is showing that there are limits to that. All these farmers, all these herdsmen were making rational decisions to increase their profits. But as a process, society as a whole collapsed because this pasture was overgrazed, which shows that there are limits to the gains from capitalism. Okay, and so this is a very, very powerful like principle. It's used in political science, business schools, and planning programs across the world because of that. Shows the limits of capitalism. Okay, now let's come back to Ganga. Okay, so lots of people are taking water from the Ganga whenever they want. Lots of people are putting things into the Ganga, whatever they want, whenever they want, generally. Okay, now the government of India, as the state government of Bihar, can approach it three ways. Either have this very, very firm rule that no one shall approach within 100 meters of the Ganga to put anything or take anything out. Okay, that would be very difficult for the government of Bihar or India to come up with, right? It's very difficult to do that because Ganga is this major river, holy river, and has huge cultural economic value. Won't be able to enforce it. The second is ask people and tell them that this is, a holy river, it's a pure river, and therefore you should not take water from it discriminately, you should not put anything bad into it, right? And that really hasn't worked. It's the holiest of holy rivers, right? And yet people are putting sewage into it, right? So that the first two arguments have not worked. So what's the third argument? The third argument is for society to discuss this and then give itself certain laws. Like, for example, saying you can take water from it if you want, but it has to be restricted to so much amount and these seasons only. Or saying that if you want to put some industrial waste into it, you can put industrial waste, but it has to be, all these toxic chemicals have to be removed. And these regulations should apply to everyone. So there should be good discussion on this, and these regulations should apply to everyone. Now, this is assuming that you can enforce these regulations, okay? And sometimes in some countries, and in some states in India, regulations would be there, probably not enforced very well or not enforced uniformly. But in theory, that mutual agreed upon mutual coercion is that you have some regulations that you all agree that you will abide by, and if you generally abide by, things will be much better. A most simple example of mutually agreed upon mutual coercion is generally on the roads in big cities, like if you go to Delhi, I've just made one trip on the road in Patna, okay, so I don't really know about this from the airport to NIT campus, so I don't really know how this works in Patna. But in Delhi, let's say, when you're generally driving on the road, in your own car that you bought with your own money, that you're putting fuel into that car, you put petrol into the car with your own money. So everything is your own, and you're doing your private business. You're driving along the road, and along the way, there will be a traffic light, traffic signal. And if it says red, everyone stops in Delhi. And then, you wait for some time, you wait for like generally maximum 120 seconds, but it seems like 1 hour, but it's never more than 120 seconds, okay? And so it feels like that, and people wait there, and then after that, you get a green light, and then you go. Okay, that's mutually agreed upon mutual coercion. So people in Delhi generally agree that for traffic to move smoothly, at certain points in time, we will have these intersections. At these intersections, there will be a light, and the light, when the a traffic light, and when the light is red there, everyone who's seeing the red light will stop. And in Delhi, it does happen. People will see the red light and it stops. In many other cities, it does not happen. There might be a light and it's seen as an advice. If you wish, you can stop. Okay, I don't know how. In many cities in India, that's how it works. But in Delhi, people do stop. And because of that, traffic moves much more smoothly. Okay, sometimes there is lots of congestion, but there is no chaos. There will be lots of cars, but when the red light comes on, everyone stops, and when the green light comes on, everyone moves. Sometimes there are only 5 cars, but sometimes there are 500 cars. So even though there's congestion, there's no chaos. Okay, and so therefore, it helps ensure smooth traffic flow. That's mutually agreed upon mutual coercion. Okay, it's a very simple example of mutually agreed upon mutual coercion, and when that mutual coercion can be enforced, like in Delhi, traffic generally flows smooth. So likewise, for environmental resources, we can have mutually agreed upon mutual coercion, and in democratic societies like India, that's the way to go. Okay, and essentially that's Hardin's a point here. And many people have built on this, and many people have said that there are limits to this mutually agreed upon mutual coercion. And the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics was Elinor Ostrom. She won the Nobel Prize about 20 years ago in economics. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics. And she said, community ownership is the best way to do it. Not have commons, but that commons should have ownership, but the ownership should not be private, profit maximizing ownership. It should be community ownership. Okay, that was a key contribution to this argument. And was the first woman, as I said, first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics. Okay, so so that's about a 40-minute discussion on tragedy of the commons. Now let me switch. And now any other points that come to people's minds from that discussion that was not very clear? Maybe you can take a few more minutes to discuss that before we move on from this topic. And we'll come back to this, okay? Tragedy of the commons is very foundational for everything that we discuss in sustainable urbanism. So any other points that were not very clear or points that were very profound? Yes, please. Yeah.
Sir, before we developed everything was commons.
Yeah.
Humanity means when we stepped on this earth,
Yeah.
everything was common.
Right.
We were free to use. And at that time I told you that we were free to misuse. I think there was no term like misuse.
Yeah.
So it was only use.
Yeah.
So it's the population and our urge
Yeah.
to get more and transform to misuse.
Right, exactly. And exploitation. Yeah.
I think this commons term we are discussing today because nothing is common.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing is common, and generally it is developing pay and use. Everything today is pay and use.
Yeah.
Still many things are free in our country. Like airport lorries are still free in our country, but we need something. I think you need to pay for that.
Not really. Depends on airports. Yeah. Some airports you have to pay. Yeah.
So I think this and one thing that you said that commons is being transformed to community ownership.
Right.
When each and every individual feel that ownership in that.
Yeah.
So when you have the ownership of a particular asset, then you also protect the asset.
Right. Exactly.
That I mean.
Yeah. That's what Elinor Ostrom was saying. So she was saying that we must take some of these resources that we call the commons and make the community feel that they own it. And once you build that sense of ownership, that they will really take care of. One very contemporary example of how the commons is managed is in Northeast India. Is anyone from Northeast India? Anyone from Imphal? Has anyone gone to Imphal? Okay. Imphal is the capital of Manipur, right? And it's got, it has lots and lots of rainfall, okay? And this, when this rainfall comes in, so Imphal is, Manipur is like a saucer, and Imphal is in the valley, is at the bottom. There is, I think there is a river, I don't know, maybe there is a river, but anyway, there is a lot of rainfall that comes in. So because of that, culturally what people have done, each person has got large parcels of land. Even lower middle income people have large parcels of land. And within each parcel of land there is a small pond, not a well, a pond. And in that pond some water collects. Then in a neighborhood of 500, 600 houses, there will be a neighborhood level pond. And then for a larger area, like 1/4 of the city or 1/5 of the city, there's a huge pond for that region of the city. Okay, so for around 50, 100,000 people, there is a pond. So when rain comes, all these ponds get filled up with water. Okay, and till about 2000, till about the year 2000, all these people, maybe 400,000, 500,000 people is the population of in year 2000 of Imphal, could get water from these sources. And they had very well established, so they had the private pond on their parcel of land, but in the neighborhood there was a neighborhood pond which is community. No one owned it, but it was a communal pond, it was a commons. And then for a larger area of 40,000 people, 50,000 people, there was a huge, much bigger pond. So these last two ponds were really commons. But over time, the communities in these areas have come up with a very good pond management system. They all felt ownership, all the people living around it felt ownership, and they had come up with some rules for how to manage these ponds. So one of the rules was, all these ponds would be fenced with strong wooden fences. Why? To keep animals from going into the pond and dirtying the pond, especially cows, because they stray everywhere, right? They could die, but they could also, and especially if they die, then it becomes problematic because they'll pollute the water and all that, right? So they had come up with that. Second, when after the rains are gone and they are water scarce, right? Water is scarce. They had rules in place which said how much water families could draw from these ponds. Okay, and then there would be situations when these bigger ponds, the neighborhood level pond would go completely dry. Okay, and when these ponds went completely dry, the entire community would come together and they would go inside the pond and clean it. They would take out all the bushes and they would apply lime, okay, because that is a cleansing agent. They would apply lime. And then when the rains come back, the water will again be nice and pure. So the community had the sense of community ownership. They had devised these rules on their own, and they put put these rules in place. And so they had fairly good water supply for at least till 2000, and it was fairly good quality water. So once you have a community, if you take the commons and convert it into a community resource, and the community feels that they own it, they'll have some ways of managing it. No one told the community to do it. This evolved culturally over a long period of time. And it was not a government order. It was not even a religious thing. It was just the community felt that this is a good thing to do, and they did it over a period of time. And that is ideal. But it takes a long period of time, and it requires some things to happen in the community. There has to be some factors that will really bring it about. Okay? Okay. So, anything else about, sorry, that was my very long commentary on that, on that response. I didn't mean to share this, but yeah. Anyone else? I know about this because some 20 years ago, I got a World Bank grant to assess whether the city of Imphal should have a water supply system, pipe water supply system. And so I came here in Imphal and I studied all this, and I found that the quality of water in the ponds is better than the quality of water in the pipe water system. So I said, World Bank should not give a loan to them. People in Manipur were not very happy. They wanted to have a pipe water system. And I was recommending, no, there should be no pipe-water system. This community thing is much better. Quality-wise, it was much better. Quality-wise, it was much better. Okay. Any other points? Any other things that come to mind on the commons or tragedy of the commons? Anything related? I don't know much about the Ganga, okay, but I thought you guys might know much about the Ganga. That's why I use Ganga as an example. Any comments on the Ganga, like how to manage the Ganga? Especially we had this big festival 2 months ago, right? A lot of people came there to the Ganga.
We are still not able to purify our sewage. Many of the sewage are actually down to the ground.
Yeah, it is, and that's horrible. And into the Ganga, which is supposed to be this pure river, right?
It's not the common people, they are understanding that they have to pollute the water of Ganga.
Yeah.
So what is happening is like the government has to take action, like people cannot control this flow. It's
Yeah.
the responsibility of the government to purify it, especially for a city like Patna and all. So government efforts needs to be very strong. It's there on the paper, everything is there on the paper, but you see actual implementation is not there. We
Yeah.
had a very big project, the Nami Ganga project, lots of funding was there, but nothing was done. There's some slackness on behalf of the government, the policies are there, but they are not being implemented. As far as common people are concerned, they understand it. If you throw some fine on them, then if you throw something in Ganga, you have to pay a fine. They are not doing it. That is what I have felt over the years.
Yeah.
And especially culturally, if you see the time of Chhat in Patna,
Yeah.
it's the common masses who clean the ghas road.
Okay.
And we have volunteers. After the Puja festival is over, they can clean the rubbish from there. But we need some help from the government as well because it's a very big problem.
Good. So my response then is, who puts the government in place? Yeah. So why don't the common people say, this is a sacred river, why are you the government putting the sewage here? Why are you the government putting the sewage here? Make that the issue and get the government out. I mean, India is a democracy, right? And it's a healthy democracy.
Sir, we have already replaced 2 governments.
And they still haven't cleaned the Ganga. No, but I think that's the way to do it, and you have to do something about it. Sometimes when governments intervene, things happen, okay? When we talk about water supply, later on in the course, we talk about water supply and sewage. And I'll share with you examples from Europe, like from 2 examples from Europe. France, Paris and London, how they used to treat their sewage. It was very similar to what's happening in the Ganga today. Okay, but they changed, so yeah. And there it was not an elected government, as in not even the people, it was actually the king saying we got to do something. Anyway, anything else about the commons?
In the section of how to legislate temperance,
Yeah.
where they talk about one picture is stronger than 1,000 words
Yes.
as a Chinese proverb, but it takes 10,000 words to validate it.
Yeah.
So, like, what is it trying to say in the morality case? How is it integrating with this concept of what I mean is the democracy or common? They're trying to solve it with the common perspective, like by democratically agreeing on some answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And we can do it, right? So because in many countries, like in India, it's the average people who elect representatives, and the representatives then discuss in the state assembly or in the national assembly, right? They discuss laws. So even though you and I are not sitting in the national assembly, our representatives are sitting in the national assembly, right? So they should be representing our interests. Yeah. So
is it saying to make it more transparent, whatever they're willing to do, like government, in order to get a single focus?
No, not really. So let me see. They're saying that legislating temperance will not work because these are all related to people's behaviors and cultural values, right? Using some government policy to change that will generally not work in a democracy. Okay, let me give you an example. In some democracies, they can go very, very strong, right? In India, this example that I'm going to use might not work. For example, in Singapore, some of you have been to Singapore, right? It's very close by. You've been there. So if you're chewing gum and you spit it on the road, okay, and someone sees you and catches you, you will be arrested, and the punishment is 10 lashes. Even today, publicly, you will be hit with a cane 10 times, and it's a democracy. Okay, but that's the value that they have adopted, and they enforce it on everyone, including tourists. So if a tourist comes there and they do this, and they get these 10 lashes. And they've done it to many citizens of many countries. They've done it to UK citizens, American citizens, Japanese citizens. They've done that. So it's they use it very, very strongly. So, but generally, like in India, would it work? No chance at all. Okay, there's no chance that there will be such legislation, and if there's such legislation, there's no way it's going to be enforced. Okay, so in some matters, it's impossible to legislate behavior. You have to educate people, and people have to recognize that this is bad, but that takes a very, very long time. So, but his argument is, Hardin's argument is, you can't regulate temperance, but you can agree on some ways in which resources can be used more responsibly. And what are the ways, how much resources can be used or cannot be used, is something that we should democratically discuss, openly discuss, and then after discussing, enforce very well.